Today, we're going to get to see a Fresno officer have to practice some very miss small, aim small marksmanship. Hi everyone, welcome to today's research-informed badge cam lesson here at Active Self-Protection. I'm your host, John Correa.
I'm your co-host, Mike Williver. Today's video comes to us from probably the most beautiful place on planet Earth, Fresno, California.
Really?
I've never been there, I don't know, could be nice.
Today's video is brought to us by Mantis. The Mantis family of products is integral to ASP staff building handgun and carbine skills and are your most economical and fastest path to improvement in your skills too. Whether you choose the X10, the Laser Academy, the Blackbeard, or use them all in concert, they will help your practice be more effective, efficient, and fun. Go check them out, pick up a unit, and thank them for sponsoring today's video.
Officer is inbound because a transit officer has called 911 and said there is a woman who is threatening herself and has a knife to her own throat and has cut herself in the throat. And so there is obviously officers are going to respond to that because then she said she was threatening other people with the knife on the bus. You can go watch the original from the PD and read all the news stories that I've linked in the description on that. Once the officer arrives, we do have badge cam audio, so let's listen in.
Where is she? What is she wearing? Hey, everybody move out the way. Everybody move out the way. Hey, put the knife down. Get out the way. Get out the way. Hey, put the knife down. I don't know why I shoot you. Hey, put the knife down. You're gonna get shot. Put the knife down. Put the knife down. Hey, get down. Put the knife down. Faculty, no IS. Get up, get up. Shots fired.
That single shot from the officer did prove to be fatal. I mean, he shot her in the side of the head. That makes a lot of sense. The PD did release a picture of the knife that she was using. It was a 6-inch carving style knife. Thankfully, her hostage was not harmed in this. It did kind of knock her over backwards when they shot that woman, but she wasn't injured in that, and no one else was either. Friends, you can tell Mike has never been to Fresno, California. I have. It is a dangerous, dangerous town. What a lot of people don't realize about Fresno is that the gangs in the northern part of California and the southern part of California, like Fresno's a no-man land of like lawlessness.
The line of demarcation, it is, I was kidding before, I know it's not a good place. I've never been there for a reason, as it turns out.
Some may call it the geographical butthole of California.
Do some people call it that?
Yeah. Mike, I do want to start this one with a reminder that I know some people are going to say, well, why didn't they send a social worker or a crisis response team or something like that? There's violence going on here. As somebody who has had crisis response literally at my house because of somebody having a mental health crisis, and then the second that person got violent, the crisis response team pulled right out and called the cops. That's exactly what they do. They're not going to violence. It's the officers who are going to go to violence because we don't expect people who are licensed clinical social workers to deal with violent people. That's not safe for them. So expecting that kind of response from the city when somebody is threatening others with a knife, threatening themselves with a knife, it's just fantasy land.
Yeah, the best we can hope for is that, agencies have the money and the time to put their officers through that kind of training, because anytime there is violence afoot like this, they're not going to send a PERT nurse, they're not going to send a clinician out into that, just like they're not going to send a paramedic or a firefighter or anyone else who's not, able to defend themselves with deadly force. So I think what I want to focus on right here, John, is how quickly this officer has to go, because he's in rescue mode right now. He's putting gloves on. He's like, she's going to need help. She understands she's bleeding, right? To go from rescue mode to, she's now threatening other people with a knife. This is no longer potentially self-harm, but this is potentially hurting someone else. It's potentially a homicide. And I've got to make a really quick transition from rescuer to defender. And he did that really, really seamlessly, I think, here, John.
Yeah, I really agree with you. Is this woman a deadly threat? She's taken a 68-year-old woman as a hostage here, according to the news stories that are linked in the description. And is she at this moment a threat of death or great bodily injury to that woman? Yes, she's holding a knife to her and holding on to her and not letting her go. She has taken a hostage. Yes, she's a deadly threat. is this justified use of deadly force all day, every day, if even without it being a police officer? If this is you or I or John Q. citizen who sees this person threatening somebody else with a knife that they have held hostage, that's justified use of deadly force. I also think kind of an important thing here, Mike, for my officer friends, notice he has got one of his nitrile gloves on here. One nitrile glove on. First of all, I don't like black gloves. They don't show blood well. Get the blue ones, fellas. But number two, have you done any shooting with your nitrile gloves on? Have you ever handled your firearm with the nitrile gloves on and seen how it affects your shooting performance? If you haven't, might be worth doing just a little bit so that it's not the first time, and it is a little different and kind of novel. I've done it.
That's actually a great point. So depending on where you live, we live in Arizona, John and I do, so there's not a lot of call for like winter gloves, but have you tried that? If you live in Minnesota, have you trained like you're going to be presenting in public? So that could mean nitrile gloves. It could mean driving gloves. If you're Big J. Okerson, maybe you're wearing fingerless gloves in a flashback to the 80s, but you need to have practice with those things because there's a very good chance you're not going to have time to take that glove back off during a critical situation. Now, I think some people might be looking at this and thinking, would she really mean it? Like, she didn't seem like she wasn't hacking at her. She didn't seem really intent on actually killing this woman. Listen, if this is someone you love being held hostage, you don't want that officer to take time to be like, well, I wonder if she means it or not. The fact is she's doing what she's doing. And I know this is a very ugly, awful thing to witness, this person being shot in the head. You may be asking why in the head, because that's the only way, unfortunately, to turn off her brain and make her stop doing what she's doing immediately, instantly. And I think John wants to talk about the marksmanship piece here. Are you confident in your shooting abilities to make a shot like this? Because if you're not, I don't want you taking the shot, right? I think John wants to talk about marksmanship here. It's so critical that you're confident in your ability to make a shot in a target area this small.
Yeah, this is an incredibly important piece here. I want you to recognize he's got a side presentation of this woman's head, 100% justified to shoot her, but do you have the marksmanship skills to do that? Where do you want to aim in this particular circumstance, right? When we're talking about looking at somebody head on, we're talking generally about under the eyebrows, so in the ocular cavities or in the nasal cavities. So you're talking about this kind of triangle here is where you want to hit. But what about a side presentation? What about something like this? You want to put it right in their ear hole. That's where you want to put it. You want to put it right inside the ear hole. And if you think about it, that's a pretty small target. That's really a 2-inch circle. And she's at about 5 yards is how far she is. So a 2-inch circle from around 5 yards for most people is an awful high marksmanship challenge. Officers, all of you, I challenge you. There's a great drill. I'm going to put a link to it in the description called Dot Torture, and it was publicized, really, really made big by Todd Lewis Green from Pistol Forum. And you should work on that every once in a while until you can get it out to 5, 6, 7 yards, and that beyond all question that you can hit with two hands a 2-inch circle at 5 yards under pressure of misses cost lives. And if you can do that, good on you. Also, one last thing before I kick it back over to Mike, if you are a pistol-mounted optics shooter, remember at these kind of shorter distances, around 5 yards, you'll have a little bit of dot offset, right? Your dot will be a little bit higher than your point of impact is, and you need to know what that offset is at various distances so that you can account for it in small shots like this.
A couple of things. When John says ear hole, he means ear hole, the actual opening of the ear, because if someone has larger than average earlobes, if you strike them that high up on the head, there's a very good chance that bullet's going to go, it's going to scalp them, it's going to hurt and make them bleed, but it's not going to stop them from what they're doing, right? It's going to go around, it's going to travel around under the scalp and come out the other side. I have a good friend who was on the Active Self-Protection podcast, Special Agent Jeff, federal SWAT team member, who was in a shootout with an armed trafficker, and he hit the guy pretty much right between the eyes, just above the brow line, and that bullet went up and around. A couple things I want to touch on real quick. This poor woman who was taken hostage, right, is now exceedingly traumatized. So I'm going to pray for her. This officer has been exceedingly traumatized because it's not always going to look the way you ran it through in your head. The situation isn't always going to be the big, strong, evil, bad guy, gangbanger, whatever. It's going to be a regular looking person like this, and a woman at that. And you're going to have to take a shot like this potentially. And I just need you to know your spiritual fitness, your mental fitness, saying the things you need to say, all those sort of things. That's not just something we talk about lightly. It's important. And getting help after something like this is something you've got to do. Despite his reaction being calm and his demeanor being calm, this officer's just been through maybe the worst experience of his life. Having to take another human's life, and it didn't look the way it looked in that reel in his head. And so if you do me a favor and pray for this woman and pray for this officer and for the family of this woman who was clearly having a mental episode and a break. This sucks all the way around. But at the end of the day, this officer did the really difficult thing he had to do to cover everyone's ass.